What am I concerned about when it comes to the Carolina Hurricanes? I've been having to give this disclaimer recently. Not much. I'm not concerned about much. Maybe that's my concern, right? Maybe my concern is like, what am I missing? Almost nothing. You have to. There are and there have been times this season. We do Hurricanes and cons. We do confidence and concerns every week for the Canes. There have been times this season where it feels like we got it, right? The concern is the attack. The concern is too many penalties. The concern is they're not scoring enough on power play. The concern is goaltender. Any of those four would work. This is the opposite of that. You really have to kind of close one eye and squint with the other to see a concern on this roster. But that's a good thing, right? Peaking going into the playoffs. My concern is this. And I want you to know I'm reaching. Maybe concerns about the future. I've spoken with professional athletes who have said everybody is playing for their next contract. Everybody is understanding, how many years they have left, what their agent is telling them. There are a lot of expiring contracts on this team, right? And it's Burns, it's Pesci, it's some guys that you are big fans of. There are some expiring contracts on this team, and up until now, it really hasn't played a factor. You don't feel like someone's pressing to get stats to be able to go into their next negotiation saying, hey, I did all of this. It hasn't felt like that. But within the last week, I'm trying to think of what day. For opening day, we were out at Durham Bulls, the Durham Bulls Athletic Park, whichever day that was. They all bleed together. And on that day, Scott Morrow out of UMass signed the entry-level deal for the Canes. Since then, there's been 3 or 4 that have signed entry-level contracts to join the Canes. And they are almost like visual reminders that the Canes are preparing for some of the guys on the team right now to maybe not be here next year, right? Morrow is somebody that I would not be surprised if he's in the opening day lineup as a defenseman next year. That's a reminder for the current defenseman, like, you might not be here next year. And that is enough to maybe put a little waver in your brain waves, right? Maybe a little wiggle in the wrong direction in your thought process. I know I'm reaching. I said I'm reaching. But everyone's aware of contracts. Everyone's aware of the decisions that have to be made this offseason. And now you have these young whippersnappers skating around at practice as visual reminders of like, hey, old guys, that costs too much. We would really like your jobs. And by the way, they signed us entry-level contracts to prepare us to one day take your jobs. If not next year, the next year. It's an interesting deal. Graham, what's your concern for the Canes?
This is a little bit of a stretch since we've only seen it happen once in a blue moon. And by blue moon, I mean last week when they played the Boston Bruins at home. A slow start. That's really the only concern that I have right now with this team. It seems like when they play from behind, they look totally different, as do most NHL teams, I guess you could say. But to me, the Hurricanes just thrive as a team when they're playing with the lead and rather than chasing it. I think that's fair just for Hurricanes hockey in general. Outside of the Washington game, when they began the game down 2-0 before they came back and won it 4-2, they look like a totally different team in the 3-0 win against Columbus and the 4-1 win against Boston. I know you could say, well, yeah, Graham, duh. It's because they won those games. But again, to me, just watching the Hurricanes.
So the slow
season,
start, you're talking about 2 Bruins games ago, back on whatever it was, April 4th.
Yeah, last Thursday, I believe.
Yep. I'll add to that. Okay, I'm gonna piggyback off of what you said. That game was following a 4-day off, their last real rest of the regular season.
Sure.
4 days off, and then they started their first 15 minutes. Looked like they had 4 months off. They were very slow to start. At the end of the regular season, their regular season ends April 16th. They're expected to be playing in the postseason somewhere around April 20th, 21st. There might be a 4 days off there, which they better learn from, right? I don't know if it's, less unplugging, less days off, louder rock music in the locker room. I don't know what it is, but they can't start slow, as you said, in game 1 of the postseason because they had 4 days off, like they did the last time they had 4 days off.
I guess my big picture concern should be the lack of days off, strangely enough.
Let's jump to confidence. My confidence is something that every coach says they want to do. Peaking going into the playoffs. They played one of their best games of the year in their fourth to last game of the regular season. That's how you draw it up, right? That's what you want to do. That's exactly how you draw it up. Whether you can sustain it through the postseason, whether you build off of it through the postseason, that's yet to be seen. But I don't think they can say, like, oh, well, we were slumping and we had to flip a switch going into the postseason. They've been playing really well recently, which is what you want to do at this time of year.
My confidence, Jake Gensel. His production since joining the team obviously has been a big notice, playing alongside Sebastian Aho and Seth Jarvis. In that win against Boston, when he extended the lead to 3-1 in the third period and extended his point streak to 6 games, 4 goals and 6 assists. He's had 22 points, 6 goals, and 16 assists in 15 games since being acquired from the Pittsburgh Penguins. I mean, might be the X-Factor player that he is the X-Factor player you need heading into the postseason just because of the experience he has playing in so many Stanley Cup playoffs.
Bring those stats, huh? I like it.
A big stat guy.
Hey, nothing wrong with it. Men lie, women lie, numbers don't. That's cons and cons. Now we have to update our confidence meter. This one's tough. The Canes have... This is a segment that I really enjoy. And actually, before we had the confidence meter, we had the Bryceometer. During football season, it was all about Bryce Young, how confident we were in Bryce based on his play. And the Bryceometer, I mean, it was like a pinwheel. It was all the way left, all the way right, all the way left. The confidence rose, the confidence fell, right? He looked like he turned a corner. Oh, no, wait, he's making the same mistakes again. Oh, the coach got fired. Oh, like it was all over the place. It's been like a month. We haven't moved the confidence meter. It is as far right as it could go. At the plan the parade slice. This is, I always describe it as like a gas gauge on your dashboard. It is all the way right, as far right as you can go, like a full tank of gas. Plan the parade. It is, maybe we should have been more difficult early on.
Yeah.
It's. Do you know what we may have done?
What's that?
Fallen into the slam dunk contest faux pas, which is, you get like every year, right? There's a slam dunk contest. They have like Shaq, Dwayne Wade, Julius Erving, Spud Webb, and Candace Parker as the judges, right? And the first dunk is pretty good, and they're all like 9s and 10s. And then the next dunk is better than that. So they have to go, all right, I guess it's all 10s, right? That was better than the first one. And then the third dunk is out of this world, and they're just like, well, we can't give better than a perfect score, so we're just going to more 10s. And then the second and third dunk end up tying, right? They end up being both 50s, even though we all know the third dunk was better than the second dunk. They just got to the max too early. I think we may have done that because as soon as they traded for Jake Gensel, the moment that trade went through, I flipped that bad boy all the way to plan the parade, which was the equivalent of like the second dunk being all the way to the right? 50. They went between the legs. I went 50. Then the next person went between the legs twice, and I'm like, I'm already at 50. What do you want me to do? So it's just been at plan the parade forever, and I can't find a reason to change it. And we've looked for reasons. We brought Adam Gold in here and said, where would you put the confidence meter? He put it all the way on the right. I've asked Dennis, where would he? He goes all the way on the right. Graham, where would you put it if we put you in charge?
This might be our year. Maybe it's
you wouldn't even put it at plan the parade. All right, this is the person we needed.
Maybe I'm just a little too superstitious, but again, 4 years of making the playoffs is great, but one thing that I feel like the Hurricanes always run into is that despite the production we're seeing out of Sebastian Aho, despite the production we're seeing out of Seth Jarvis, even Jake Gensel's in a sense, it seems like whenever we run into another team that has a guaranteed goal scorer, that's when things kind of unravel a little bit for the Carolina Hurricanes. It's like last year when they played against the Florida Panthers, and they had 3 consistent scorers, guys that whenever they touched the puck could put it in the back of the net. I felt like a lot of times we were sitting around asking, where's Sebastian Aho? Situations like that. So I need to see in the first round guys like Sebastian Aho, Jake Gensel, Seth Jarvis, those 3, that line just in general. And then Throw in there some Tavo Teravanas, and Jack Drury, who'd be great to see. I need to see some guys that are consistent goal scorers throughout the playoffs, not scoring coming from the blue line. Stuff like that.
I think you might be the opposite. You might be somebody that saw Vince Carter in 2000 and went like, 7. That's tough. To be this might be our year. They are one of the betting favorites to win the whole thing. Tied for. Actually, at one point, if you look at DraftKings, they were the number 1 betting favorite. You're a tough grader.
Maybe I'm just zagging when everybody else zigs. But
on ratemyprofessor.com, all the comments say, impossible grader. I spent all day on my report, and then he gave me a C.
Look, they're a good team, but we all know that playoffs, anything you do in the regular season doesn't matter once the postseason rolls around.
100% agree with you on that. But it is so you're just saying there's no possible way they could be higher than this might be our year until the postseason. They're max for you. Okay, so our maxes are just different. That's fair.